Welcome to Read Your Comics. I'm looking at X-Men number 40. Thanks for joining me today. My name is Daryl. I'm the host of Read Your Comics. I'm doing a 30th anniversary read-through of The Age of Apocolypse. It actually started in this book, Legion Quest. Well, I should say this crossover story, Legion Quest, that went over the two main X-Men books, Uncanny X-Men and The Adjectiveless X-Men. Looking at part 2 today, but before I do that, I just want to give a quick shout out to all the viewer support. All your likes, comments, shares are appreciated, and if you haven't done so already, why not hit subscribe so you never miss a future video. If you find this positive comic content is good for the community, your subscription is going to push it to other comic fans as well so they can participate in positive comic book content. Let's jump into today's book. As I was saying, Legion Quest was a 4-part story that kicked off the Age of Apocolypse. There had to be some catalyst to get us to that alternate reality where Xavier was dead and Magneto had formed the X-Men and Apocalypse rises to have taken over the world, more or less. This story was pretty much self-contained just to the two main X-Men titles, Uncanny X-Men and the Adjectiveless one. I'm kind of doing this as a real time, so for the first couple months, you're just going to see a video every other week. But as soon as we get into the Age of Apocolypse, I'm going to try to keep up a 1 video a week pace covering the X books that would have come out coinciding with that week 30 years ago. I love this cover to this one. I think this is probably, well, both the X-Men, Adjectiveless X-Men covers for this storyline, I think are the two best. I love this cover of Legion, sitting in a wheelchair, he's on fire. I think at this point, the news had leaked about what Legion's plan is, but as we go through the story, we really don't see that still. But if you were like a reader of Wizard magazine or following the solicitations, at this point, even I think there's ads in here for future issues that are hinting that the death of Charles Xavier is coming. Now, Xavier had actually died a couple of times before in the present day, but this time he's really going to die in the past and it's going to screw everything up. So that's where it kind of left off. Last time, Storm had confronted Legion in the desert of Israel and the Gold Team, Storm and the Gold Team, and they got kind of whisked away into the past. Now, in that issue, it doesn't really spell out exactly where or when they were going, just that Legion had a plan to fix the world so that Xavier's dream would take form. There wouldn't be the obstacles of his ideals. So this issue jumps out and we see Xavier, he's in a wheelchair and he's commenting on how like lightweight and everything the wheelchair is. Kind of a switcheroo here because the next page, it's Magneto who he's talking to. Now, one thing I'm going to say about this storyline, it hints that it's at the past already because Xavier stands up and they're continuing their discussion about how they're working in a hospital in Israel together. So right there, we're knowing this is the time when Xavier and Magneto are actually friends, and they haven't even confided in each other that they are both mutants at this point. What I'm going to say, though, is Magneto does not look really any younger than he does in the future or the present day from this point, and neither does Xavier, and I think that's a failing. Now, art in this is by Andy Kubert. I love both the Kuberts. He was coming out of his Jim Lee clone style that he was doing when he first took over this title, but you know, Jim Lee's been off for a while. He's been on it solo, and he's kind of developed himself back into, well, it was probably his style anyway. Just when he first came on, he was trying to keep that, I'm sure editorial was asking him to keep that Jim Lee kind of look going for a while. But by this point, you see the Adam Kubert in this. I am going to complain about the coloring in this issue, though. I'm sure this is some early digital coloring, and we've got the nice paper, the glossy paper, but it's stuff like this that is it's just messed up. We've got these shadows from the blinds coming in, which I'm sure was in the penciled work, and I don't know if the colorist thought it was part of the shirt or something and like divided the shirt into these two colors. It just looks weird. It looks weird. Others like little gradient stuff. Also, when I posted this book to Instagram and I was kind of looking at it like, small pictures that I took on my phone, I noticed how like the panels don't really pop off and are easy to tell what's going on when they're reduced like that. And it's the coloring that gets too muddy. I don't know exactly what it is off the top of my head, but I don't love the coloring in this issue. I do like Andy Kubert. Not a big fan of how this issue was colored, though. I think it hurts the book. So Xavier leaves, and Magneto, it turns out he's like an orderly here, and he's having his inner thoughts about confiding in Charles and stuff. You see him lifting the wheelchair that he designed, this lightweight wheelchair, and is putting it away, and he goes in to check on this patient, and it's hard to tell in this, but this is Legion. Your only hint is that if you read the previous issue, you're kind of like, oh, that's Legion. Where does hair go? Where does crazy hair go on this one? That's a fail. Now that's a failing on Andy Kubert. I don't know why he gave him like short hair here. So it's hinting at that he has amnesia here too. He doesn't know who he is or why he's there. Then we're going to cut back to the blue team. Now the X-Men were kind of divided into gold team in Uncanny and the blue team here in the adjectiveless. But for this crossover story, after that first issue, and this one we're going to start like blending them together into a bigger team. And then we're going to go into the Age of Apocalypse. And I think when it comes out back initially, it doesn't really go back to blue and gold teams. It's just kind of like two X-Men books. Anyhow, they're showing up to Israel in the present day to look for the gold team. There's a relationship going on at this point with Archangel and Psylocke, who is one of the gold team that got whisked away. So they're out there looking for him, and they find Jean. Here's some of the ads, and I don't think any on this page really mention it. I do love this statue, though. The comic shop I worked at had that statue. There's also a pretty awesome Magneto one. They were like a Sentinel series. I think a Rogue one, and maybe I think there was 4 altogether. But the Wolverine and the Magneto one are two of the best statues around. So here's this one with Legion kind of over a casket, and that's Magneto. Yeah, it even said the death of Professor X right there at the top. So at this point, I guess the cat was out of the bag that Professor X was going to die, and that was going to be the catalyst for this. Oh, I like this too. This is the Age of Apocalypse Wolverine, but it's miscolored, so he's kind of like in his yellow outfit. Good panel pages here, I think. I love this panel of Jean and the way her arms are like draped over, her hands are draped over each other. I like this panel a lot. And she's kind of like waking up from, being knocked out. And she said she was barely able to hold onto the ground using her telekinesis as the others got sucked up into Legion's vortex. And it does the whole like, it's not where, it's when. When did they go? Where did they disappear to? Good questioning here too with Gambit, like what are we doing here? And I guess Beast is the field leader on here at this point because he kind of mentions that. Jump back to the past one more time, and we see the gold team, and here they've found each other, and they've learned each other's names, and they know that they're together, but they can't remember exactly like who they are as far as they're a team called the X-Men. I like the way Iceman powers up right here, and he looks more frosted, kind of like his original look in the early X-Men issues. Not total snowman, but I just think it has more of like a frosted up freezer kind of look, as opposed to when he's like more of a crystal looking ice, which he was in the previous issue. So this tells me that even though they've kind of discovered that they have these powers, they don't 100% remember how to use them. And they kind of chastise him here for icing up in public. And he's like, oh, I looked around, nobody saw. Then we're going to check in on Wolverine because he's not with the blue team in Israel. And at this point, Sabretooth has been a captive in the X-Mansion, I think, since the Phalanx Covenant, as I think is what the storyline was called. And I think that's when he kind of got captured. And they've been working on him to make him more docile, kind of like Wolverine, kind of remove some of that anger stuff. So they left, and he was like, haha, you should have left me alone. And he's trying to escape the cell, which I find funny, too, that, like, Why would they design a cell with the circuitry for the cell underneath in like a panel underneath the cell you're holding somebody in? It seems kind of silly, but whatever. It backfires on him, shocks him, and sends him back. And it's like, well, I'll get out. You shouldn't have left me alone. And Wolverine, like, who said you were left alone? I think this is miscolored here because it's almost like he's sticking his head through these energy bars, which would mean they're pretty pretty wide apart. I'm thinking that this pink color was meant to go in front of his face right there, but it's a pretty cool shot. And this is leading you to read Wolverine number 90. I am going to cover that book, even though it's not a direct tie-in to the Legion Quest story. It's just such an awesome issue. We got to take a look at it as this chapter of X-Men, I guess you would say, ends before it goes into the Age of Apocalypse. And all the X books, I must have had that. I wasn't reading them all at the same time. I was just pretty much reading these main two and Wolverine, and then I would pick up other issues if they were branded with the crossover of some sort. I think Generation X, which was only like 4 issues in at this point, I was getting it too. But they all kind of have this moment, kind of like this book is going to have. But that's all we see of Wolverine and Sabretooth on this one. We definitely get a nice shot. You can tell he's got the bone claws. This is not too far removed from this. This is issue 40, and that happened in X-Men 25. So, we're only like a year and a half into it, I guess, or not even a year and a half, just a little over a year into the Bone Claw era. Back to the past again, and Magneto's kind of going through his thoughts about Xavier's relationship with Gabrielle Haller. I like the shadow with the Magneto helmet there is a nice little touch. And he's there talking to Legion, who, again, his hair is gone for some reason. And Legion kind of has like his powers go off. And when he touches Magneto, he starts getting like visions of Magneto's past. And he partly is wondering like how could you have lived through this? And then I guess it turns out he's like, but turn out to be what you become. So I like how the Nazi soldiers look almost demonic. So as we're getting this psychic feedback, it's also kind of painting Magneto too. And he, yells at him to stop it. Stop this. And he exerts his powers and pretty much destroys the hospital room. So all the stuff that's going on here is pretty noteworthy as we jump into the next issue, which we'll get to in a couple of weeks. But so then Xavier and Gabrielle Haller are walking through, and as Psylocke here walks through, she senses him too, and he senses her. But again, she kind of has partial amnesia herself. She knows her name, and she knows she's part of the group that she's with, but she doesn't remember Xavier exactly. But something triggers it, right? Now, another thing I want to point out, this is all taking in the past, and I don't think Kubert does a great job here of demonstrating that with like older looking cars and things, and even like the hospital. Like, let me go back to the beginning because I meant to point that out. It kind of throws you off here at the beginning because look at these like panels in the background. This is supposed to be taken in the past, like 20 to 30 years in the past, right? Look at these panels. They're like Star Trek looking panels, right? And then even there was another place. And you just kind of see them there too. Not so much on that one, but there was another place where I just felt like he didn't do a great job demonstrating that it is like in the past when he had the opportunity to, other than when they just kind of showed the characters expressing. Like, here's a good part. This could be anywhere in modern day, like New York even, Now, over here, back on this page, he, puts these Jewish people here to, I guess, reinforce that it's in Israel. But I just don't think he does a great job establishing where they are in this. Again, I like Kubert. I like a lot of his panel layouts and stuff. I think that's kind of a failing in this issue, though, to really demonstrate that they are in the past. He didn't age the characters really well. The set pieces aren't descriptive enough. So Magneto comes running, looking for Xavier here. Pretty panicked look on his face. And he's saying that the the John Doe patient they had has exhibited some traits that they've had in their discussion. So again, they have not come out to each other that they are both mutants at this point, but they are having discussions about the potential idea of mutants existing. They're kind of feeling each other out. So they return back, and we see Legion. He's like on fire, and he's having these telekinetic visions coming out of the fire of the X-Men here. So it's a pretty wild scene. This is a page that I think Andy Kubert does pretty well on, but again, I think the coloring takes away from it because the reds and oranges and yellows all blend together so much that you don't even really see this initially. Like, I mean, even like I'm looking at it on my screen as I film this, and it's hard for me to initially make out that there's like faces and stuff in here. But then when I look at it closely, I'm like, it's clear. It's not trying to be subtle in any way, but the coloring muddies it up. So Back to the Future, Back to the Future, and Charles is called Cable in, and I don't remember Cable being so cavalier when he arrives. I don't remember Cable being so cavalier in this era. I mean, he's like, "Hi, Pop, what's up?" to Xavier and Cyclops and everybody, and pretty cool pose, even though it makes no sense. He's just coming because they called, but he's got this like angry pose going on, and she looks like she's diving down out of this thing from the sky almost. So it's Cable and Domino showing up to help because it's a temporal anomaly of some sort. They think that maybe he can help, but his little chronal gizmo he had has been damaged for some time. And the Israeli military thinks he's Strife, and so there's some confusion there. And then we get Lilandra. In the last page of the last issue, we saw Jolf tell Lilandra that there was a cataclysmic event happening, and the M'Krong crystal was essentially going to shatter and destroy all that is and overturn everything that they know about their reality, blah, blah, blah. So she shows up to warn them. Pretty good splash page here. It's the 90s. You got to have one of these turn the book sideways splash page. It's funny. In this one, you only get it this once. As we get into the Age of Apocalypse books, there's going to be almost 3 to 4 of these per book. At least with the Kubert brothers in particular, but even the other artists, this was just such a trend to turn the page sideways. And then I love this splash page at the end with all the Watchers, and they're all there. So I mean, one Watcher showed up to warn Reed Richards that Galactus was coming. And here we have 7 Watchers showing up to warn them about what is about to happen. So, it's raising the stakes at how big it is. At this time, the X-Men were kind of their own little corner of the Marvel Universe. They did have an Avengers crossover about a year before this, but for the most part, the X books were almost kind of their own little pocket universe already. Like, things that were happening in the X books weren't really affecting the Spider-Man books or Hulk or Punisher, any of that kind of stuff. And that's why it was odd that they were going to do this to where all the X books were going to cancel and they were going to go into their own little pocket universe while the other books just kept going along. They build it initially almost like this is what you're going to get from X-Men now. It's going into this other world or this other universe, and that's just it. It's only going to be a 4-month event when it's all said and done, but they definitely, at least at the very beginning stages, they definitely build it like this is the new status quo for the X-Men. That's why we're canceling all the books and relaunching them with number 1. So again, stakes are high here. This is the same page that I complained about in the last issue with the terrible background, and it's telling you what's going on with all the other X books. Again, I'm not really going to cover any of the other X books that came out at this time except for Wolverine, and there's a Cable issue that is branded the Legion Quest because he's in it. So it'll have one with him. I did want to point out in the last one, I don't think I looked at the copy that had this. I've been cracking up at this subscription, mail order subscription postcard that is included in the back of this. Now, Marvel Comics forever had the subscription page in the back. This time they're giving you a prepaid postcard you can rip out of the book and send it in. What cracks me up about it is they wanted you to put your credit card number just right here and drop this into the mail with your credit card number just written right there for the world to see. It cracks me up in this day and age when, there's so much security to do like a purchase online. Although purchasing online is like super easy, there's all the security to hide your credit card number when you're in your own house on your own computer putting it in. But then they were like, yeah, just put it on a postcard and drop it in the mail, and good luck. Anyhow, look at that Maximum Carnage ad for the video game. So it give you more of an idea of what was going on at this time. So that's it for Legion Quest Part 2. I'll be back in a couple of weeks with Part 3. And until then, read your comics. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed my breakdown of this issue, you can support the channel by hitting subscribe. It costs you nothing and helps other comic fans find the channel. You can also visit readyourcomics.com for cool merch, like this. Read Your Comics isn't just a brand, it's a mantra. And when you wear a Read Your Comics shirt, you are helping spread the word. For more classic comics conversation, be sure to follow me on Instagram at read.your.comics. And if you're still here, why not watch one of my older videos? Here or here.